Welcome, everybody, to tonight's call. This is a science call that's all about metabolic health. We do these every week. We started with a very small group of people who were passionate about metabolic health and insulin resistance. And now we have this call will be viewed by hundreds and even thousands of people all over the world who are using the protocol that we're going to talk about to dramatically improve their quality of life and their metabolic health. Today, we're going to be specifically talking a lot about shedding excess body fat. Lots of people are interested in weight loss and they want to know how this protocol works for weight loss and what we can do to maximize the amount of body fat lost on the protocol. So we're going to talk about that today. Just because I'm a little insecure about tonight's call, because this is the first time I've done it on this computer. My computer's in the shop. So I'm on a loner here, and I'm a little worried about how it might go. I've made some other people co-hosts so that if I happen to drop off the call, they can hopefully carry us forward. So, but we're glad that you're on the call tonight. It's going to be an awesome call. And if somebody you love or care about is struggling with their metabolic health, we want you on this call every week. We're going to show you some pretty amazing things. And this is a protocol that is really changing the world. That might sound like an exaggeration. I'm not exaggerating. And I will prove it to you here later in the call. So great to have all of you here. We're going to go ahead and get started. To begin, let me just introduce myself briefly. My name's Trent. I don't know most of you, maybe almost all of you. I don't know you personally, but many of you have been following me or others of us that talk about metabolic health and have decided to look into this protocol, or maybe you're just starting the protocol. So this is something I'm very passionate about. This is something that has changed my life. And I started making educational content about insulin resistance and about metabolic health and teaching people kind of what you're going to learn tonight. And I've had hundreds of thousands of followers now from all over the world that have followed me to learn about this. And many of them have started this protocol and have had life-changing experience. And so we hope to deliver that to you or your loved ones if that's what you're here for. Now, to begin this call, we have a special guest. This is a person who I've never met in my life. And so this is a stranger to me, but somebody that has had an absolutely amazing experience on the protocol. And just so people can learn what is possible here, we've invited Mr. Philip Blackman onto tonight's call. So let me bring Philip on. And Philip, I'm going to invite you to unmute, and we'll open our call kind of by talking to you about your experience. So we don't know each other. Tell us just a little bit about yourself and maybe where were you with your health prior to starting this protocol?
So my name is Phil. Basically, um, I got a couple businesses. I just like helping people. I definitely was in the food industry for a while, so that's another thing too. Loving food, of course. But a little bit about me, before the protocol. Everybody, when you grow up, man, you feel like you're invincible a little bit. You can eat whatever, you can do whatever, and then realize like eventually you go get old and things start, not working the way I want to. So I wasn't eating right. I wasn't eating vegetables, drinking water really. After so long, man, it just started building up and catching up with me as I got older. And, I start seeing that I'm starting to build up a belly fat and I just start getting bigger over time. So
And tell me, if you don't mind getting a little personal, what were some of your personal vices or struggles when it comes to food? For example, was it snacking? Was it overeating? Was it sweet tooth? What was it for you?
snacks. Everybody loves snacks. When you're running around, doing stuff, and you're younger and all that type of stuff, you like to snack, grab a bag of chips and cookies, and of course, back then, fast food, everybody was always grabbing or trying new places. So that was definitely something that, didn't help in the long run, of course.
And so when you started this protocol, where were you at weight wise or A1C? I understand you had a really high A1C reading that came back that kind of scared you and a diagnosis with that. Tell us about that.
So basically, I went to the doctor. My glucose was a 303, and my A1C was a 14.4. So basically, what happened? They kept telling me that I'm type 2 diabetic, and it just wasn't going down. I was working out, I was doing all types of stuff, and the weight wasn't coming off. They gave me a blood sugar where you poke your finger and take your blood sugar. And they kept telling me like in the morning before when you wake up, it should be under, I guess, 90 or something or 80. And every day I was just waking up every single day testing it and it was 270, like 320. Like, you know what I mean? It wasn't nothing under 270. And every morning I just was getting depressed. I didn't even want to take pictures of it no more to show the doctor. I just so long, man. You just like almost like giving up.
Okay. So I think many of us know the feeling of considering giving up when everything we're trying is not working and we're frustrated and scared. And so tell us first, give us all a frame of reference. How long ago is this? I mean, when did you start the protocol officially?
90 days.
So for 90, you've been doing this for 90 days. Now
Yeah,
I
90 days was May the 7th.
okay. So like 97 days or something like that, right?
Right.
So tell me about your first like week or two. Brittany was telling me that you got on this protocol and it was a rocky start for you. And many people, if they would have experienced what you experienced in the first week or two, maybe even the first month, I don't know how long it lasted, probably would have stopped doing the protocol. So tell us about that and tell us maybe why you stuck with it.
So basically, when I first started, I actually started the day after I got my results from my blood work. So I'm like, if I'm gonna try something, I'm gonna try it now. Like, so I just gave it a shot. After so long, like I'm basically probably like a month. Boy, that fiber boy gets to you. I just couldn't get the fiber, man. The fiber was not reacting with my body like it was like everybody else was talking about. I'm like, this just not working. And I just kept, but me, I just forced through it. So I was forcing myself to take the fiber so my body can, because of course she was telling me, um, your body has to get used to new stuff. You know what I mean? Something that you're not used to. So therefore, I just kept taking it, kept taking it, kept taking it, and eventually I start getting adapted to the fiber. And yeah, for a minute, I just was like, man, this is not. It's just terrible. Like,
Hey, man, I want to credit you with something because, the number one thing that separates the people that have fantastic results with this from those that just kind of, do sort of kind of okay is the willingness to endure a little bit of discomfort as their body adjusts. Now, some people, have a problem with that, but you stuck with it. So 90 days in, I understand you recently got some new blood work. Tell us about that.
yeah, so I was just like, look, if this don't work, I told him I'm going. I probably start taking insulin, and that's what I said to myself. So I went in there. Just I'm like, look, doc, I just I didn't tell him yes yet. So I was just like, okay, I'm ready. Let's did the blood work. Soon as I went in and they took my weight, I was down 25 pounds. Um, After that, they seen that they was like, oh my goodness. So they kept saying like, and then I start showing them my numbers from my glucose. I'm talking about I went from 270 to like 300 to like my lowest was 86 at that time. So they was like, they start seeing everything. So he was like, look, you lost 25 pounds. He said, whatever you're doing, just keep doing it. So I just kept doing it, kept doing it. Like I said, I got the blood work the next day. My A1C dropped from a 14.4 to a 7.2. And after that, my glucose dropped from like a 303 or three something to a 119. So basically, I dropped it basically half in 90 days.
It that is incredible. I'm so happy for you, Philip. And credit to you for sticking with it, even though it was a bumpy a rocky start, right? I want
Right.
to ask something, and we gotta wrap up. We're actually over time, but I did not want to interrupt you because that was just beautiful, and I appreciate you telling your story. But I started a little slow because of this new computer I'm on. So tell us emotionally. I mean, where you are at 90 days ago, waking up looking at 300s on your blood sugar and a 14.7 or whatever it was, A1C, and the prospect of going on insulin and medications and kind of just waving the white flag to type 2 diabetes. The emotional state then versus your emotional state now, what has changed?
Um, Basically, if this can work for me, and I was never a healthy person, if this can work for me, I know I can get other people to take this and get this and just get through to people and let them know that you can. If I can do it, I know you can do it because I didn't eat and I didn't eat good at all. I know I can. I know I work through it. I stick with it. And if they stick with it and keep it going, I promise you, you get the results, man. Hey, I didn't think it was going to be that dramatic or, that big of a change, but hey, just keep doing it, man. Hey, I love it. I'm telling everybody, as much as people I know, I'm going to try to help them so they can get where I'm at.
Philip, thank you so much for being our guest today. You need to go look in the comments, man. There's 270 people just on the live Zoom, and you're getting a lot of love in there right now. You've inspired a lot of people, and there's definitely dozens, maybe 200 people, right, that are watching this that don't know if this protocol is really going to do what they're hoping it will. And hearing your story is definitely going to inspire some people. And I'm not exaggerating. I believe you saved a life today, and maybe more than one. So thank you. Thank you for being our guest. We hope to hear more from you maybe in another 90 days. I can't wait to hear what your blood work is. But congrats, man, and thanks for coming on the call. Just fantastic job.
No problem.
Awesome. Oh, that was awesome. So, so if you're watching this and you're wondering, wait a second, you're telling me that somebody with a very serious and dangerous stage of type 2 diabetes. So when somebody's A1C is above 10, that is serious. When somebody's A1C is above, 6, they're a pre-diabetic. If it's above 10, the doctors start to get very, very concerned. And when your A1C is almost 15, that is like red alert. In 90 days, to cut that in half and get it in the low 7s. In 90 days, to see your morning blood sugars go from the 300s down to 100, that is incredible. And most people in the medical community might argue that that's actually impossible to accomplish in 90 days without dramatic medical intervention, right? Now, if you feel like that maybe is just, a super duper amazing testimonial that is few and far between, I cannot wait for you to hear the rest of this call. Because if you're looking for proof, we're going to give you so much proof that you will want the people that you love, and even you personally, if you struggle with metabolic health, you'll want to give this a go. You'll want to it is the simplest thing ever. We are not counting calories. We are not on some crazy elimination diet. We are not on some extreme exercise protocol. This is a little bit of fasting and a little bit of fiber. And when you combine those two things together, the results are incredible. Now, on today's call, we're going to tell you exactly how to utilize the protocol and how to maximize your results, specifically when it comes to fat loss. Fat loss is our hot topic on today's call, okay? We're going to talk about insulin resistance a lot. And I have one of the top metabolic experts in the world on the subject of insulin resistance as my guest today. So I want to get her on the line as soon as possible. But for anybody that's here for the first time, just so you know, we will also have a live Q&A at the end of the call. So if you're struggling, if you're having problems, maybe you're not sure if this is the right protocol for you, feel free to raise your hand, ask questions. We want you to have a great experience, and we need to get moving. So let me go ahead and bring our guest on. Today, we have the wonderful Lindsay Venn, who is back on our call. Lindsay is one of the top experts in the world when it comes to metabolic health. one of the top in the world. Lindsay spends her day every day helping people fix their metabolic health. I'm talking about helping people reverse their type 2 diabetes, their prediabetes, their insulin resistance. For women, their PCOS. For men, their erectile dysfunction, and do it naturally. So, Lindsay, I'm going to turn the time over to you. Lindsay's going to be presenting on insulin resistance. You're going to learn a lot. She's also specifically going to be talking about fat loss.
Awesome. Thank you, Trent. So I'm going to share my screen so everybody can have access to these videos. I was laughing because as we were talking, Trent, and I was trying to pick a topic for tonight, I tend to do this thing where I get way too scientific and way too deep dive-ish. And I forget that there's so many people out there who just want to learn the basics and talk about things like fat loss, how simple. So let's talk about that. I assume everybody can see my screen. Trent, interrupt me if something isn't going right. But we'll go from here. So you can find me at two places, Venn Integrative Medicine or Insulin IQ. The websites are listed there, and I'll have them up again at the end in case you didn't get a chance to write them down. So first, insulin resistance. I'm going to briefly talk about this because I want to dive into the fat loss part, but how do you know you have it? Who should be worried if they have it? What are signs and symptoms that might prompt you to investigate this further? Insulin is a growth hormone. It makes things grow, including fat. And that's how we're going to start talking about fat today too. But here's an instance where it makes you grow excess skin, known as skin tags, or excess skin pigmentation, known as acanthosis nigricans, excess belly fat. Other symptoms that aren't related to the growth part are fatigue, which is very, very common with insulin resistance because we can't get energy into the cell, which means we don't get energy into us, or uncontrollable hunger, hunger that's present that doesn't make sense. Those are all signs and symptoms of insulin resistance. If you have these, you definitely want to check it out. So what is insulin resistance? Well, every cell in the body requires insulin in order to get it in. And so I compare this very much to a lock and key. If you look at the cell, for example, the key is your insulin, but the lock is the insulin receptor. If the insulin receptor is broken or is resistant to the key or the insulin itself, then this doesn't work like it's supposed to. If this doesn't work like it's supposed to, we cannot get glucose in. The way it works when I look at my patients is a normal patient, glucose will go up when they eat something, insulin will go up and everything will come down nice and normal. Those are my non-insulin resistant patients. The ones who do have insulin resistance have the same glucose pattern, but they tend to have this over exaggeration of insulin secretion, which then leads to actually hypoglycemic or the feeling of a hypoglycemic event, because that over exaggerated insulin response will lead to a crash. And that's what makes us be hangry and makes us want to eat shortly after a meal, makes us feel like we have to snack, things like Philip was saying. So that's where this plays a role. When it comes to fat, we do talk about the fact that insulin, when it reaches those super, super high levels, it's going to put fat into anywhere it can put fat into, particularly adipose tissue, but as well as liver and muscle. And it can do this in one of two ways. Hypertrophy, this is 95% of us. We have this thing called hypertrophy where our fat cells just get bigger and bigger and bigger. There is a capacity to this. And this is why people who gain weight by hypertrophy have kind of a cap. They can only gain so much weight. Well, that's because we don't make more fat cells. And once fat cells are so fat, they can't get any fatter. Well, we're done gaining weight. The other 5% of us, we do this thing called hyperplasia, and that is gaining more and more tiny little fat cells. This is actually a little bit healthier when it comes to metabolic health, but it certainly is a weight problem because we can gain obscene amounts of weight. This is my 600-pound life kind of people. But remember, insulin is the driver of this. Insulin is the thing that will lead to both an increase in hypertrophy and hyperplasia when it comes to your fat. So I really like to look at, okay, and when we're trying to solve the problem of too much fat, we need to understand what causes it. If we don't understand what causes it, we don't know how to fix it. And so we call this the etiology of something. What is the etiology of weight gain and obesity and fat gain and increase in fat mass? Well, we have always been told if you eat too much and you don't move enough, then you're going to have this thing called weight gain. So that's been the dogma of weight for, decades and decades and decades. So what should be the cure? If people can just tough it out and eat a low calorie diet and they can tough it out and do their exercise, then they should have success, correct? Any of us in the weight loss world, whether it be people like me who help people lose weight, or whether it be people like Philip previously who struggle and struggle and struggle to lose weight and are unable, are very aware of this. This calories in versus calories out strategy is not effective. It might be effective very briefly short term, but it's certainly not effective long term. So what is reality? You know, we tell our patients to eat a low calorie diet, they do it, they tough through it, they exercise, they tough through it. Unfortunately, they don't have success. They're exhausted and they're tired and they think that this is just the way it's going to be for the rest of my life. Well, that's not true. So maybe we have the etiology or the cause of obesity wrong. You know, think about that. So current thoughts, again, we make bad choices. We don't have any willpower. We don't exercise enough. That makes us fat, right? Well, no, that's not true. Let's look at the hormonal model of obesity. When we have high levels of insulin, and remember at the very beginning, we talked about this, we have high levels of insulin, it makes us really, really hungry, and it makes us really, really tired. Well, what do we do when we feel that way? We eat more. And when we eat more, because our insulin is high, we then become obese from it. And so we need to figure out how to reverse this so that we do better. For my medical providers or people in the medical field out there, I always like to point out that we know this. Traditional medicine doctors nowadays hate to acknowledge it, but when we used to diagnose type 1 diabetes in patients like this, it was because they came in just ravenous. They're eating and eating and eating, and they're thin, they're emaciated, they're having all of this weight loss because they don't have any insulin. They're type 1 diabetics who don't have any insulin. Now you look at our type 2 diabetics, and if we measure your insulin, we have really high levels of insulin and we have lots of obesity, particularly that abdominal fat that we all want to get rid of. So, and here's proof. I mean, you look out your window and we know it. This is the world today, unfortunately, because of insulin resistance. We're just fatter than we've ever been before. So let's talk about what we do about it and where these different fuel sources come in and how we change using what we put in our mouth for fuel into using fat. The body fat that we store, how do we use that for fuel instead? So to make this simple and easy to explain, we have two fuel sources. We've got glycogen, which is our quick storage form of energy. And I like to compare this to a refrigerator. We go to the grocery store, we want to make something tonight for dinner, we're going to put it in the fridge. We are not going to put it in the freezer, right? Because it's harder to use the stuff from our freezer. Fat is our freezer. It is our long-term storage form of energy. It's harder to use, you know, like your freezer, you store it in the basement, you freeze the food, you have to thaw it out in advance. Our fat stores are harder to use as well because it's much easier to use our fridge. So for weight loss, particularly fat loss, we need to empty out our fridge. Well, let's talk about what makes our fridge fill up. First of all, we eat carbohydrates and our insulin levels go up. So we're going to fill up our refrigerator to its maximum capacity, which is our glycogen. Again, this is our quick storage form of energy. If we continue to eat, which insulin will drive us to do, then we're also going to start shuffling that energy into our freezer or into our fat stores. Insulin does not allow for things to go in reverse if it is elevated. The only exception to this would be exercise. You can bypass insulin in order to use glucose if you are exercising. But if you're not exercising at the moment, you're not going to be able to do that maneuver and you will require insulin to manage those carbohydrates or that energy. So remember, insulin is like a one-way road. You can only go in one direction. If your insulin levels are elevated, you're going to store all of your excess calories as fat. You're going to feel super hungry way more frequently than you should, and you're going to crave carbohydrates and sugar. If you can lower insulin, you're going to be able to burn your own body fat for fuel, which is going to help with fat loss. Like Trent had said, we really want to focus on fat loss today. If you can use your love handles instead of what you're putting in your mouth, you're going to lose weight. You're going to lose fat mass, which is what we want. We're going to feel less hungry. We're going to be able to fast better and longer without any kind of struggle. And we're not going to have those carbohydrate and sugar cravings that we are used to. So think about this. What would you rather do? You want to be a storage, I call it a superhuman fat storer, or do you want to be able to burn those love handles for fuel? Getting insulin down is the key. So the study that just came out, Tufts University did this, 7% of Americans don't have to worry about this yet. And I say yet because they might have to. 93% of us do. And so we have to be really careful when it comes to insulin resistance and increase in fat mass. Why does this matter? Because of all of these chronic non-communicable, meaning you can't catch them, kind of diseases, as you can see in this slide. It's ridiculous. And again, this is why body fat was the topic for today, was this is part of insulin resistance. So let's talk about a couple. I'm not going to talk about as many as I usually do. Let's talk about a couple of them. Type 2 diabetes. Philip did an amazing job. Like Trent said, anything above 6.5 is considered diabetic. At 14, a traditional doctor should have and would have put him on insulin, and the Feel Great system did better than probably the insulin would have done. So if you look at this chart on A1C, I always like to point out that the 6.5 number here means that your average blood sugar is 154. That's diabetes, but you know, in the traditional medicine world, we don't consider this 151 average to be diabetes. It's kind of stupid. So we really want to pay attention. Where I start worrying about A1C is at 5.5. If you can be below that, you're going to be just fine. But ideally, you want to check your insulin levels. Again, insulin is this culprit for fat storage as well as non-communicable chronic disease. So get a fasting insulin measured. No matter what the reference range says, you want it to be less than 6. If you are above 6, you are insulin resistant. You will be this way for decades before it turns into type 2 diabetes. So get a fasting insulin. You can go to places like ownyourlabs.com and get these ordered yourself for a very inexpensive price. High blood pressure. This is another one I like to talk about. So high blood pressure is an insulin problem. When we have too much insulin, we have too much aldosterone, which increases volume. When you increase volume in a closed system, you lead to increased pressure. Insulin also leads to endothelial dysfunction and nitric oxide problems, which you can also see in here, that will lead to inability to dilate and constrict. And when you do that in a closed system, you also increase pressure. Coronary artery disease, we have been told for decades and decades, just like calories in versus calories out, that if you eat saturated fat or cholesterol, that it's like hot grease down a cold pipe. Well, that's not true. What we really have to worry about is the inflammation of insulin resistance. And we measure this very easily by looking at a triglyceride to HDL ratio. So you take your triglyceride and divide by HDL. Here's my numbers. So 84 divided by 83, I'm at 1. Ideally, you want to be less than 1. To not be insulin resistant, you need to be less than 1.5. Like Trent said, I look at these numbers all day long. I had a record, by the way. I had a guy with a 22 that I'm going to meet with tomorrow. So it can be really ridiculous. Anyway, triglycerides that are common, 150 is very common and considered normal. And an HDL of 50, again, very common and still considered normal, leads to an HDL or a triglyceride to HDL ratio of 3.0, which is actually pretty significant insulin resistance. So we need to pay attention to these things. Alzheimer's, type 3 diabetes. If you haven't heard this yet, you need to be aware. This is very much insulin resistance of the brain. If glucose cannot get into the brain cells and you are not on some diet that forms a form of ketones like intermittent fasting or low carbohydrate or using the Feel Great system, you don't make ketones. And so you do have this very increased ability to create cognitive decline, brain fog. A lot of us, and I should put that on the insulin resistance side, brain fog is this. It is insulin resistance of the brain. Fatty liver, #1 cause of hospitalization worldwide and in the US when it compared to any kind of liver disease, whether it be alcoholic liver disease versus hepatitis C. Fatty liver is now taking over. This is a very hard thing to actually catch. So we want to make sure that we are paying attention to our insulin resistance more so than we're paying attention to our liver enzymes. Fertility is one that we see, infertility is one that we see all the time. PCOS is caused by insulin resistance. As you can see here, some other symptoms you might look for: hair loss, irregular periods, facial hair in women, acne, those kinds of things come from insulin resistance that's leading to PCOS. Because we cannot make enough estrogen, we don't ovulate, and we develop all of these problems that are androgen specific, which means we've got too much testosterone. And then lastly, men. Infertility in men, we do know is a problem, and this is related to testosterone. The correlation between high insulin and low testosterone is very well established. You can reverse this. You get insulin down, you'll get testosterone up, which helps with sperm production. Or again, this vasodilation, vasoconstriction thing, insulin resistance inhibits your ability to vasodilate, which obviously causes problems with ED. Getting insulin down, this is an easy way to fix this. So what do we do? And this is where I really love what Trent had to say. When it comes to fixing all of this, including wanting to lose fat, we want to incorporate, in my opinion, two things. Number one, the Feel Great system is a fantastic way. It's a fantastic tool to make things easier. The other thing that we do at Insulin IQ, this is Ben Bickman, for those of you who don't know him, we incorporate intermittent fasting, low carb eating, the Feel Great system, exercise, stress management, and sleep, all in order to help lower insulin. Again, if you lower insulin, you are going to be able to burn fat instead of store fat, and you can reverse these chronic diseases. So again, if you want to reach out to me, here's my contact information. I'm happy to help. Insulin IQ is offering a 10-day free trial to our community membership. So go to insuliniq.com and you can connect with Rich and Carly and Ben and myself. And we're happy to help you with your journey of insulin resistance and fat loss. So
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Guys, this is such a luxury. This is somebody who I'm not paying any money to. I've not coerced her into coming here. I've not held, her children hostage. She's coming here as one of the top experts in the world because she believes in what we're doing. There are 291 people on this live Zoom right now. Many of you are watching live on Facebook or live on other apps. And so who knows how many people are seeing this. But the reason that many of you are here is to be educated. I've learned that people actually don't want to be medicated. They want to be educated. They want to understand what they can do to fix the root cause of their problems. And the protocol I'm about to explain, it fixes the root cause of the problem better than anything else I'm aware of. Now, I want to just kind of share with you, I'm a little actually embarrassed to even talk about this, but I want to share something with you that I don't think I've ever shared before, certainly not on this call. So for a long time, for a couple of years actually, I did health coaching. And I would bring in these people who most of them were interested in fat loss and weight loss, and many of them had pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes. They were insulin resistant, right? And so I would bring them in and I would do this like assessment. And my assessment, the first thing I would say was like, what are your struggles? Right? I would ask the person that I was coaching, what are your struggles? What are you struggling with? And the answers were always the same, right? So one would be like sweets, sugar, processed food, right? Another would be, well, I struggle with snacking. Like I'm always grazing. I feel like I need something to chew on. And if I'm bored or stressed or emotional or sad or whatever, I turn to food. So, there was a lot of snacking. Another thing that a lot of people had a problem with, and this was my problem, is overeating, like eating so much at meal times past the point of being satisfied, and even past the point, in my case, of being full, just too much food, right? And so, then I would come with my program and I'd be like, hey, so here's what we're going to do to fix the problem. All right. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to stop eating junk. And, when I would say this, I knew that it would work and I knew that they needed to stop eating junk. But I had this little voice in the back of my head that says, Trent, they just told you that is something they struggle with. And now you're telling them stop. And then I'd say the other thing we're going to do is we're going to stop snacking, right? Also, another struggle was no energy, which is a polite way of them telling me that there was no exercise happening with consistency, right? So I'd say, well, we're gonna stop eating junk, we're gonna stop snacking, we're going to portion control, and we're going to start exercising. And so this was the protocol that I'm prescribing to these poor people who are coming to me for help. And they're like, I could see it in their eyes. They're like, well, didn't you just hear what I said, Trent? These are all the things that I struggle with. And you're telling me that I now need to fix my broken self and put myself together. I've been trying to put my broken self together for decades. I can't do it. I don't have the willpower. I struggle. And so this message, I love that Lindsay talked about it, this message of weight loss is simple. Just get in a calorie deficit. That advice is actually not very helpful advice for the average person. The average person cannot accurately track how many calories they eat. They can't do it with precision. The average person cannot accurately track how many calories they burn in a given day. And we know that willpower, as Lindsay said, is such a limited asset. I mean, willpower is really good until you're underslept or stressed or sad or a million other things, right? And so, you know, as I was doing this health coaching back in the day, I really felt like I was giving people a blueprint for, yes, it would be successful if they stuck to it, but I was giving them a blueprint that we both knew they couldn't stick to long term. So while just getting a calorie deficit isn't actually very helpful advice for most people, what would be extremely helpful advice is if somebody would teach us, this is how to get in a calorie deficit and stay in one and keep your insulin level low without feeling hungry all the time, without having cravings all the time, without, you know, all these things that you struggle with. And that is exactly what this protocol is. Now, I want to explain a little bit about why this protocol works. Then I want to explain carefully how to use it. And then we'll open it up for questions if there are questions. But I don't know if that resonated or landed with you, but that just, what we've got is so much better. And I want to show you how it works. So real fast, real fast. Let's share my screen once more and let's talk about why we get sick. Lindsay mentioned that only 7% of American adults are metabolically healthy right now. Why are 93% of us unhealthy? And how can we fix it as fast as possible and fix it for good once and for all, right? So I'm stalling here because I'm waiting for my screen to start sharing. And I don't believe it can be seen yet. Let's see here. It's coming.
You know, Trent, while you wait for
go
that,
ahead.
I will pipe up because I'm just realizing I didn't say it in my presentation. The way to lose fat is to empty your fridge. So you have to tap into your freezer. And that's where this comes into play, is that the fasting and the balance and getting glucose down and keeping carbs down is what empties that fridge. So you have to use your freezer for food. So
love it. Thank you, Lindsay. So why are we all getting sick? Well, everybody knows about white rice, right? What most people don't know is that actually in nature, wild rice looks like this over here. So around every single grain of rice is something called the bran. That's the fiber part of the rice. But food makers have been stripping food. When we talk about processed foods are foods that have been stripped of all their fiber. So we, you know, God made wild rice like this over here, but we only eat the white part, right? Wheat in its whole form, but once you strip the fiber, you can make processed products like white bread. So every carbohydrate, every sugar in nature is supposed to always come with fiber. And so, you know, an apple is basically sugar and water. And yes, there are some other really good phytonutrients in apples, lots of good stuff in apples, but it's a lot of sugar and water that's been packaged in fiber. And when you remove the fiber, you juice the apple, you're left with just the sugar water, right? What has happened in the last 50 years with the processed food revolution is all of our food, our bread, our pasta, everything that comes in a box, a bag, or a package that is processed is basically a bunch of sugar water. It causes blood sugar to go up. There's nothing to control the blood sugar. What would control the blood sugar and the insulin? The fiber would, but the fiber's been stripped. right? Even sugar itself in nature comes packaged in fiber. And so when we know this is not, conspiracy theory here. We know that fiber is the bomb. I mean, if you have diabetes or pre-diabetes, fiber is your friend because it helps with blood sugar control and weight management. It lowers your risk of heart disease and cancer. Fiber is specifically what controls blood sugar and insulin. Fiber is specifically what controls, prevents your body from taking in some fat and cholesterol, lowering triglyceride, lowering cholesterol. It helps with digestive health, gut health, right? It is amazing for your digestive health. But fiber is also what keeps us feeling full and helps with weight management. Did you know that when you get the right types of fiber in your diet, it actually keeps you feeling fuller for longer? It makes it so you don't feel hungry or crave, ravenous all the time. It also creates a gel in your stomach. Matter of fact, I'm going to mix up some fiber right here on camera, actually, and just demonstrate this. So when you get the right types of fiber, which is what we use on this protocol, and you mix it with water and you have this with your meals, when you first mix it with water, it's very thin. It's like the consistency of orange juice. But I'm just going to let it sit for a moment and we'll come back to it. So when they started taking fiber out of everything, we started getting sick. Everyone, not just, a few of us, like Lindsay just said, 93% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. And it is everywhere. Okay. Now, when one kid is failing the class, you have an individual problem. So if there was just one of us failing this class, or if 10% of us were failing the class, we could say, all right, those people don't have enough willpower. They need to, eat less and move more. That would be a valid argument if only 10% of the kids in the class were failing. But when everyone's failing, you've got a systemic problem. So because this is being removed from everything, we are losing a grip on our metabolic health. When God made energy, when he made food in carbohydrate form, he packaged it in fiber. Take out the fiber, get sick. The other thing that's kind of terrible is eating and snack. Of course, if the food's not satiating, you're going to have to eat and eat and eat because you're never feeling full. And when you eat and eat and eat a processed food, your blood sugar goes on a roller coaster. That's the blue line. Your blood sugar spikes and crashes and spikes and crashes. Now, this will make you feel like you have no energy and no willpower, because every time your blood sugar crashes, you feel hungry. In fact, you might even feel lightheaded. You might feel hypoglycemic, right? But insulin, that's the purple line, remains elevated all day, and we become insulin resistant, or we get hyperinsulinemia like Lindsay was talking about. So again, it would be very, very helpful advice if somebody would teach us actually how to achieve and maintain a great calorie deficit if we're trying to maximize fat loss, but without feeling deprived and, without asking us to just grit and bear it, right? And so that is what we've done with this protocol. We're going to take all the research and data we have on fiber and all the research and data we have on fasting, and there's literally hundreds and hundreds of papers on both of these, and we're just going to combine the two. And so this is what we're doing on this protocol. Now, if you've not started the protocol and you still are totally lost on what we're talking about, I'm going to show you something in about 5 minutes that will blow your mind, okay? But before I do that, before I show you something that's just truly incredible, this is how the protocol works. So, most people are used to breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? What most of us are doing on the protocol is we are skipping a meal. We are doing some fasting. Now, when we fast, we're actually not starving. We're just switching fuel sources, like Lindsay said, right? Instead of burning food for fuel, we're burning what's in that deep freeze in the fridge, right? We are burning fat for fuel. And our bodies actually feel wonderful when they burn fat. If we can get them to do that, the body and the brain feels great on fat. But because this is hard for most people, what we are doing is, we're taking the $5 we save by skipping a meal, and we're going to use that money to actually buy some things that will make willpower easier. We're going to make it easier on us, right? Now, if you struggle with willpower and dietary discipline like I do, this may save your life. So the Unicity, this is used, these yellow packets are used to make fasting easier. They do a lot of great, and the Unicity does some incredible things. It increases your GLP-1 by 60 to 70% naturally, so you don't feel hungry. But I mean, it really just makes me forget about food and makes me not care to snack. This is really helpful for me. Then when it's time to have my heaviest meal each day, and I actually usually do it before both meals, I will have a packet of the fiber. And this is a blend of fiber that is like, well, it's unlike anything I've ever seen in my life. I've looked far and wide. I cannot find anything that will replicate this. So once it is given time, it will start to thicken and form a gel. So what was once very liquid and thin is now a gel. And this happens in your stomach. So you drink it while it's in liquid form, and you then eat your meal, and it creates a gel. And this is what fiber, the right types of fiber, do around the food that you eat, right? And I was just on an airplane today, and they gave me these delicious Biscoff airplane ginger cookies, which are like my favorite. And since I have one of these handy, I will pull one out. So this cookie represents processed food, right? This is carbs, this is fat. Potato chip is carbs and fat. Anything we eat nowadays is pretty much carbs and fat if it's processed. And normally when we eat this, it causes a blood sugar spike and an insulin spike. It leads downstream to overeating. It leads to blood sugar problems for people that are insulin resistant or pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic. But when we have it with fiber, the fiber creates a gel. And the gel surrounds the carbohydrate and the fat. It actually blocks some of the fat absorption. And it surrounds and masks, it disguises and slows the digestion of the carbohydrate so that our blood sugar doesn't spike and our insulin doesn't spike the way it otherwise would. It's great for cholesterol. It's great for triglycerides. This right here has been removed from the modern diet. And when they started taking it out of all the food that we're eating, we all started getting sick. Now, why would they take it out? Are they trying to hurt us? I don't know about that. But one of the things that happens when you leave fiber in food is it spoils faster. The other thing is it's very satiating. You don't need to eat as much. And so maybe those are two things that are very good for their profits and bottom line, why a food maker might take fiber out of food. Nothing sinister per se, but good for profit, right? So I went on this protocol and it completely changed my life. I started making content and videos about this protocol and got hundreds of thousands of people from all over the world, many of who started the protocol and sent me messages saying, Trent, this has completely changed my life. I'm off my medications, yada, yada, yada. But I said I was going to show you guys something really cool. And so if you're here for the first time, I want to really just open your eyes to what's going on here. So most of you on this call are strangers to me who I've never met in my life. You've started the protocol. Maybe you're a week on the protocol. Maybe you're a month on the protocol. Some of you I recognize, and maybe you're a year on the protocol, right? So I want to ask for a favor. I don't want to give proof because it looks like I'm doing a commercial on this stuff, right? If you would help me, if you have been on this protocol for a week or a month or a year, if you have noticed a measurable positive difference in yourself or in a loved one, if you would just take 5 seconds and write a sentence or two in the chat, that would help me very much. Now, I don't want you to exaggerate. Just the truth is enough, okay? There are people on this call who have not started the protocol, and, some of them may be kind of skeptical at this point, right? So if you would do me that favor. Now, I want to be clear, this is not my company. This is not my product. I'm not the manufacturer, right? I believe in it wholeheartedly. I've been using it for about 2 years religiously. It's the first time in my life I was able to achieve and maintain a healthy weight long-term without yo-yo dieting. It works fantastically. The manufacturer does a 90-day, no questions asked, money-back guarantee. You can look at your blood work and you can prove it. Measure your blood work. when you go back to your same doctor that you've been seeing and they do your blood work again, it will be a dramatic, measurable improvement, just like Philip shared with us, or the manufacturer gives you all your money back. And Lindsay, Lindsay, if you don't mind, let's say somebody doesn't have a doctor. Maybe they're scared to go to the doctor. Maybe they know they're in a bad place and they need lab work, or they need help, or they need a doctor. How would somebody contact you? If you don't mind putting in the chat, how would they contact you to get labs or get second opinion on their labs from somebody like you, if you don't mind? Okay, thanks, Lindsay. I think you're writing in the chat. If you're talking, we can't hear you. Okay, I'm going to read a few of these, and then we got to open up the Q&A. Rose Golda, this is my third week. I was 263, and now I'm down to 249. I have so much energy. Holy cow, 14 pounds in 3 weeks is no joke. Deborah Saunders says, my headaches are gone, and I've lost 65 pounds. Shirtless Eddie says, Trent, I started this system 1 year ago. I got down 115 pounds. I've reversed my type 2 diabetes. My pain from inflammation and my confidence and stamina is excellent. Monica Rose, down 30 pounds. My skin is improved. My sleep is better and feeling amazing. Stephanie Green, I've been on it for over a year, reversed my type 2 diabetes, and I've gotten off my statin for the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. I've lost inches. Christy Henderson sent me a direct message and said, my IBS symptoms were resolved overnight. I'm 2 months in and my inflammation is gone. Misty Dyer says, my arthritis pain is way better. Robin Sickler says, 24 pounds gone, energy up, no skin tags. Stacy Sims, Stacy, I love this. Stacy Sims says, I'm less than a week on the protocol and my sugar cravings are almost non-existent. You see, that's what's helpful. How can we help somebody stop overeating, stop snacking, stop sweet tooth cravings, stop feeling lethargic, right? How can we do all those things in a helpful way so that we're not asking them to do the impossible? And that's why I love this protocol. It just makes it so much easier. Tiabe says, lost 62 pounds, reversed prediabetes, dropped my triglycerides to HDL ratio from an 8.2 to a 1.7. Olivia, I've been on this Feel Great system for a year and a half. I used to snack all the time, not anymore. Lisa Schoenfeld says, lost 20 pounds. I'm off my blood pressure medications. No more neuropathy in toes or an achy body, just in 90 days. There are 59, check that, 61 additional messages. Zoom user, my daughter has lost 85 pounds. Elite Field Services, no more neuropathy. I sleep better. My inflammation's gone, and I've lost over 50 pounds. Guys, I could read these. We don't have time, but I could read 61 additional messages. There's the proof. When we started doing these calls, we said we were going to change the world. And soon, with everybody's help, if you just tell people about what we're doing here and screenshot some of what you're seeing in the chat right now and say, you've got to come onto these calls, you could save a life. You could change a life. And that's what we're here for. So without further ado, let's bring back Lindsay, Venn, the expert. We're so lucky to have her. And let's open up a live Q&A. Now, we only have a few minutes. We want to make sure we ask questions and then we'll move on. Everybody gets one question. And if you don't mind raising your hand, there's a little Zoom feature where you can raise your hand. We'll bring you on the line. If you don't know how to raise your hand and you've got a question, you can send it to me privately or to Lindsay or put it in the chat. Randy,
there was a question. Oh,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, there was a question earlier about how to measure your insulin resistance other than triglyceride to HDL ratio. Get a fasting insulin and glucose. You can go to ownyourlabs.com and order that yourself if your doc won't.
Jeff Knoll says, I was doing well on this system. I fell off for personal reasons. I hope to come back better than ever soon. Hey, Jeff, I hope you will too. I know what it's like to fall off the wagon. This is the easiest wagon to hop back on, right? It's the easiest wagon to hop back on. And, I know that some people are worried about could I try to do it with water only? Could I fast with water only? Could I eat a lot more fiber in my diet? And the answer is yes, you could certainly do that. So if, Jeff, I don't know you, and maybe it has nothing to do with it being cost prohibitive for you, the protocol to get 2 Unimate and a balance each day, it's about $5 per day. But I mean, we're skipping a meal. And so by skipping a meal, you take the $5 you save and it's cost neutral. But if it's cost prohibitive, You could certainly try doing it as best you can without the protocol. I can just tell you from personal experience, that's the wagon everybody falls off nonstop. This is an easier wagon to stay on, and it's cost neutral. So if you could swing it, brother, this works better than anything I've ever tried. Okay.
And there's a guarantee. Also, I have a question from Wendy. It was a DM. Is there such a thing as starvation mode? And can you stop burning fat for fuel? And if so, how do you get out of it with the right food? So there is such a thing as called starvation mode. And it's that calories in versus calories out model I was talking about. That's the biggest loser, if you think about it, where they are exercising these people to ridiculous extents and feeding them very low calorie. Your body's metabolism will slow down. If you feast and famine, which you are absolutely able to do with Unicity and the balance, you will not enter starvation mode. We actually show a 250 calorie increase in metabolism if you measure your basic metabolic rate by lowering insulin. Again, feast and famine, not starvation mode.
Here's a question from Willie Brumfield. It says, what is the best way to raise my HDL?
Exactly what we talked about in the call today, doing Feel Great system, low carb, whole food, get those seed oils out of your diet because those will drive HDL down. If you need extra help, omega-3 supplementation and niacin can actually help drive that up, as well as exercise. So make sure you're exercising a lot.
Thank you, Lindsay. Okay, Crystal Swan Griffin has a question, her hand raised. Crystal, we're going to bring you on the line live. Welcome, Crystal.
Hey, well, thank you. Hey, I got a quick question for Lindsay. I have a friend, she's on the call. She may want to identify herself and she may not. Her fasting glucose was 87, but her A1C was 6.6. And then they did an average of her glucose and it was showing like 140 something maybe.
Yeah, that's a high.
Yeah,
A1C.
why would they want to put you on medication if your fasting glucose is 87?
A1C traditionally is the thing that we look at to get that 3-month average. But here's the big question, and for your friend, if our red blood cells live longer than 90 days, they have more exposure related to time to glucose. A1C assumes a 90-day half-life, which means that elevation is related to increased exposure related to increased glucose. So fructosamine or a glycosylated albumin are the two tests that you can get done to rule in or rule out that A1C, or to get a CGM, because maybe her fasting is low, but the rest of the day and overnight is high. And a CGM would also tell us that. So does that help?
I may have to send you a message later. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Crystal.
You're so smart. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Crystal. Hey, we've got time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. And there's one that I want to ask here that came through about, will it help my swollen ankles and my sister's Hashimoto's? We've done some other calls where we've talked about thyroid, and maybe that's a good topic for next time we do one of these, Lindsay, is talk about thyroid, Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism. You know, these autoimmune things are definitely different animals. But actually, Crystal, who just asked that question, Crystal has been on our call before because she had Hashimoto's and lost over 50 pounds on the protocol, and it's totally changed her life. With swollen ankles, Lindsay, do you have any? I know tons of people with fluid retention problems are having amazing success on this protocol. Any response to the ankle question?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, fluid retention is related to increased aldosterone from increased insulin. You lower insulin, you are going to dump fluid like crazy, 1 in itself, but 2, again, if those vessels are not constricting the way they're supposed to in the lower extremities, if you improve the function of the endothelial cells by improving insulin, you should get better constriction and ability to clear that fluid. Also, the leaky, we call it leaky gut, but we also get leaky vessels that lead to that is improved by lowering insulin. So threefold benefit.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to go to our last question. We're going to bring you on the line with your question. Your name is covered by my cursor and I cannot move it. So go ahead with your question.
Linda.
Linda.
Yes, thank you. So I've been on the protocol since December. And I can't say that I've gotten rid of all sugars and stuff, especially Christmas time, but I don't constantly eat it. But I'm wondering, my metabolism is probably slowed down. I'm 63, and so that might have something to play into it. Is there like one or maybe two things I should really focus on? I'm not getting as much exercise as I want. I normally do. I know that. And I know low carb does help. I'm just like trying to talk myself into doing that again.
What are your goals?
To probably lose 10 pounds is really where I need, but firm things up, more that, and then just feel not as achy all over.
I want to ask one more question, and then I'll let the expert respond, because this is a better question for Lindsay and me. How long have you been doing your fast? How long is your fast?
I start eating right around noon, 11:30, 12:30 till 8. I do the 16-8 fast typically. I mean, sometimes it's a little off, but that's what I've been doing, and I can easily go without breakfast. This morning though, I was like, okay, 11:30, 12, I'm hungry, or I'm feeling my stomach starting to growl. So, and drinking, I'm drinking the Unicity. I sip on it. I don't drink 2 of them. I don't know, that's a lot before lunch, I guess, but then I do drink my balance before that. Lunch is, I try to make my biggest meal.
Okay.
So.
Lindsay.
So you almost answered your own question. I hate to say it, but we have to chase the insulin beast. And if we can chase it in one of a variety of ways. I have many, many patients who will not go low carb, and that's totally fine, but they have to flex their fasting muscle. And then they have to feast at that meal or that meal and a half, because if you are low calorie, you're going to slow down your metabolism. So it always is in the effort of chasing insulin. If you can even just make lunch very, very, very low carb, that still allows, I like carbs less than 50 a day in women. That still allows 50 grams of carbs at dinner with your balance, and you would be fine. And I would bet if you could do that very low carb lunch, less than 50 at dinner with the balance, that you would see a change in what's going on. So
okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
I want to say, as we close this, I really appreciate you coming on, Linda, and asking that. One of the things I don't like about these calls, and I'm trying to change it, is, we have this environment here where there's 270 people on a call that are all saying, yeah, this is amazing, I've lost 50 pounds. And the people that are struggling, that aren't seeing the results as fast as they were hoping for, are like, well, maybe this doesn't work for me. And I did not lose a pound for the first 5 weeks I was on the protocol. I mean, I felt good, but I didn't see any progress. So I'm really grateful that you came on and told us you're struggling. And if any of you are struggling, reach out to us. And on next week's call, blow me up, right? Seriously, tell us what your problems are. The Q&A is actually meant to handle questions like the one you just asked on this. So excellent question. Thanks for sharing that. Guys, we really appreciate you giving us an hour of your lives. And you are helping save lives by being here and inviting others. This is something we do every week. We hope you'll join us again. There's different topics now. We're jam-packing these with education. If you or somebody you love is struggling with their metabolic health, invite them to this call next week, and they will thank you later. Love you all. Have a great night. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Nella Garcia, for the translation.